So one of the most popular tools for SQL injection is SQLMap. We'll cover how to install this in our how to set up your lab section of this course. We can actually use this tool to look for MySQL injections. So what I usually do myself is kind of play around with it manually, confirm there is a vulnerability there. And if there is vulnerability there and I want to speed up my process, I will go ahead and use SQLMap. So what you can do is you can actually read the SQLMap how-to guide. We're doing a -H. It tells you all the different options for it, but for this case we're just going to give it the -U, which is the URL we want to test out, and we're going to give it a valid URL. There we go. Let's clean this up really quickly. So we're giving it a valid URL, and we're going to see if it actually can exploit this. So what SQLMap does is that it throws it a bunch of different payloads. It looks at it and sees if it comes back with any errors or anything that could look like it's a vulnerable application. So in this case, it's saying, hey, I think I'm going after MySQL. I'm going to try payloads that are at a level 1, risk 1. You can go all the way to 5. You can predefine this if you like, or you can take SQLMap suggestion. So again, it's going to throw a bunch of queries. It's going to look for one that comes back and confirms that, hey, this application is actually vulnerable, and this is how you can prove it by using this particular query. It's going to give you an example query that confirms there is actual SQL injection present in this application. So it says right here, hey, it looks at the date parameter is vulnerable, and we're going against a potential MySQL 5.012. and we did it with a sleep. So I talked about doing a sleep function before. You can use it to confirm if a query worked out or not. So let's say yes. Let's let it wrap up its work and see if it actually works. So as we expected, it came back and it says, hey, the date parameter is vulnerable. Do you want to keep testing if there's others? We can say no. And now we can see that it came back and said, hey, I was actually able to verify it with this payload. So this is one that they tried, similar to what we had earlier. Instead of 1 = 1, they did this one, and they did some letters as well. So now that we know this is vulnerable, we already confirmed manually this is vulnerable. We can also copy one of their payloads just to see if it works. So let's try this out really quickly. We're going to throw this in there. It comes back and says count is equal to 2. What if we change the value 3037 through 3038? Comes back 0. Okay, same as what we were doing manually, but now we know that SQLMap was also able to identify it. So now what we can do is, going back to SQLMap's help, we can see that there's different ways we can get information. So we can retrieve everything. We can retrieve the banner. We can do the current user, current database. We can pull tables, columns. For the sake of this tutorial and for this section, we're just going to grab the banner. So we're going to go back to our original query, and we're going to do a -B. Let's go back. There we go. We're going to do -B, and it's going to start receiving data for us. So right now it's going to brute force for the version. What it's doing is literally it could be doing something like a sleep or substring and saying, hey, look for the first value is at 5. Okay, the second one is 7, is at 32, and then it's guessing the letters as well until it's finished, and it's going to go to the next thing. So SQLMap can be very handy when it comes down to speeding up your process. A lot of hackers rely on it, but I highly recommend getting good at SQL injections because tools often miss finding these vulnerabilities, and doing it manually, it's easier to discover than relying on a tool.